what's been proven in science is that our brains will remember story over facts.
Oh, I'm so glad you can make it. Grab your coffee, get a notebook, and pull up a chair because we got some goodies for you. In case you don't know me, my name is Lydia Nicole. I am an actor, producer, and your acting career coach here to help you transform your career from undiscovered to unstoppable. And this is Acting Smarter Now. And today we are talking memorization. Oh, yeah. You know, when you have to memorize all that material to get on set and deliver the goods. Well, that's what we're talking about today. My guest is Loren E. And she is a director, an acting coach, and now an author who's written a fantastic book called Stop Memorizing Your Lines. I love the title. So she is breaking down all the things we need in order to get that material inside of us in a more incredible way. So, without further ado, let's go to the interview. With your book, Stop Memorizing Your Lines, you come out of the gate really strong. Like you are putting Uta Hagen on notice, and you're like, okay, this is what she does, this is what I do. What made you, first of all, want to write a book about memorizing lines?
That's such a great question because I don't think that that was truly my intention. What happened is it just sort of evolved, honestly. And what happened is that I struggled with memorizing lines. I threw up before an audition with Richard Jenkins. I got stuck in a pajama game audition singing the same melody over and over again. So I struggled with it. And it really was like, well, I guess I'm not an actor because I can't seem to, I get so nervous and I can't memorize lines. So then what happened is I started teaching, and it was actually, I was a filmmaker, and my actors were saying, you should be teaching acting. And I'm like, there's so many coaches and teachers out there. Why do you want me to teach? And they're like, because when you say it, it makes sense to me. And I think that's what all we're looking for is who's the teacher that makes sense to us, right? And I had a master's degree and I studied all these other teachers and everything, but the thing that was missing was sort of a step-by-step repeatable technique because, you know, if you're going to build a house, you do step by step, but acting there isn't, right? And what happened is I was like, here are these 9 things these are the 9 concepts of acting. If I'm going to start teaching acting, I need to teach these what are the things I teach? These are the 9 things. I started teaching them and I thought, oh, turn them into questions because it was kind of the pop psychology of the time. Like questions make you think differently when you ask a question. So I turned them into questions. I threw them in an order. We started working them. And then it was just like my students just got off book like that. And I just never forget those. I'm like, how did you do that? And I was shocked, and it kept happening over and over again. And they just kept saying, I just did the 9 questions. I just did what you told me. And then it was a friend, another acting teacher, who said, don't you have a book, don't you? And I said, well, in my head. And she said, well, I'll refer you to a publisher. It turns out it's the same publisher as Stanislavski. And so that made me super happy. And when I was talking to a book coach, he goes, what's your, like, about title? He goes, what's your argument with with the industry, with your industry? I'm like, that's easy. Stop memorizing your lines. Because I even with coachings, would say to the agent or the manager or the client, I'd say, don't come to me, but do not memorize your lines. And people would be freaked out. They still are freaked out by it. They're like, oh, I got to know my lines before I can do anything. And I was like, so that's my argument. It's like, just stop memorizing your lines. And it was then in the peer review, because it's an academic book, in the peer review that somebody said, well, I don't believe oh, no, it was before that. It was actually on YouTube. I had a YouTube video that somebody, a scientist, got on there and said, well, that's science. You're teaching, that's heuristics. And I'm like, there's science behind this? And I'm like, whoa, okay. So I said that in my book proposal, and one of the peer reviewers says, well, I don't believe there's science behind this. And I guess there's a little rebel in me. And I went, oh, yeah. And since I had titled it Stop Memorizing Your Lines, and that was like going to be the good catchy title that'll get people's attention. I now was like, well, I have this thesis and I've got to support it in every single chapter because that's what I was taught. And you're like, you support this. If I'm going to state it, I got to be able to support it. And so I wrote at 7 o'clock in the morning. So here I am at 7 o'clock in the morning doing my research, Psychology Today, looking up all these scientific. Please look at the end notes and you can see how much research I did. And every single question had science behind why it helped you memorize. And I was just like blown away. I didn't plan it, it just happened. So that there's science behind every single question and why that question reaches into a different part of memory in your brain. And that's why now I know why it works. So it just sort of, I don't know, I followed the breadcrumbs and this is where it brought me.
I love it. Well, first of all, I love how you open the book where you state, I'm going to pull out my book because I made some notes. So let me just get right to it. Page 10, you say, it is very rare that an actor is formally taught how to memorize. And that is so true. I find there are two things that actors are rarely taught in acting class: memorization and rehearsals. And I've asked a lot of teachers, so how do you rehearse? Well, you rehearse. No, I don't know. Tell me how you rehearse. But in memorization, there's an expectation that you already know. And what we know from childhood is you did it by rote. And in the book, you say memorizing by rote is does not work.
It's scientifically the least effective way to memorize lines, to memorize stuff. It wrote, yes, as a child, we learned it because we had to learn our multiplication tables and we had to learn dates and statistics of history and all that stuff. And so that's what rote memorization is for. And rote memorization is basically just encoding. So you're just encoding, 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 encoding. And that's why it only lasts 20, 30 minutes. That's why it's a short term memory. It doesn't have any sticking quality, right? Because there's three things. I can get all geeky about this. So,
Get geeky, girl. Get geeky. We want the geek in you to come out.
and so it's if I see your eyes gloss over, I'll know. But there's three things you need to memorize something, right? Your brain has to encode the information, then you have to be able to retain that information, and then you have to be able to retrieve it on demand. And for an actor, they have to do it in a high stakes situation when really their survival brain is kicking in because they're standing in front of maybe somebody famous, maybe their dream job or their dream director, and they are required to remember those lines, and not just the lines but the story and the scene and the work that you've done. You got to retrieve that on demand under high pressure. So when you've only encoded through rote memorization, you're only putting the words in, it's like just filling up a glass, it's harder to retrieve. And that's why it goes out of your brain, because there aren't any mechanisms to retain it. And so many actors are like, well, I'll put the lines in and then I'll do the work on the script. And it's backwards in the way I've learned, the way I've figured this out. And yes, it's very rare. I actually don't know anybody who was really taught how to memorize. And what I just hear over and over again is that you're just expected to be able to do it. And actors base their performances, this is the thing also, is they're like, was it a good performance? How did that go? How was your self-tape? How was that audition? They'll go, well, I missed a couple lines. That'll be like the first thing that they'll talk about, whether it was good or not, whether I can get the job or not, is whether I memorized it or not.
You made a point, and I want to come back to it because most actors live in this thing. We are in high pressure auditions or high pressure settings. We book the job, we find out we booked the job the night before, and now we're on set, and we have not taken in all that dialogue. We have to do all that dialogue, we haven't had it. And
Mm-hmm.
so how does your technique help the actor instead of freaking out about, oh my God, I didn't learn the lines, you have a whole different process that you take the actor through in the book, which is fabulous.
Yes, and yes, it's a 220-page book, and yes, it takes time to learn it. But once you've learned it, it's a procedure. And so you can put it in your procedural memory so that when you get a script, your brain starts going, okay, what's the scene about? What are the relationships? Where does it take place? What happened the moment before? Right. And I'm only teaching people to do what I can do in less than a minute. I have students who can do all 9 questions in less than a minute, but it takes the time to understand the detail of them, and to also, and there's formulas, believe it or not, that go in there. And it's also this level of trust, right? So what really, if you're going on set, let's say you walk on set, you have an audition, you're going to be on set tomorrow. Most likely you've done, if you auditioned for it, you already had to do some work on those scenes before you walk on set, right? And so why not start at the audition instead of posting them all over your wall or on Zoom or in your, you're doing yourself a disfavor, and even a student told me that she had a friend that used an ear prompter and then got on set and then forgot all their lines and lost the job, right? So you're not doing yourself any favor. So start when you get that audition, and start by breaking down the story. And that's what these 9 questions do, is they really put you in the story. And that they put in, by asking questions, is the first and best way to build memory. You're building connections between new information, which is the lines, and old stuff, which is it's either your episodic memory, like episodes from your life, your semantic memory. Semantic memory is the way that is like cultural. Like if I say Hawaii, people think of the beaches and they think of palm trees and they think of, you don't even have to been there to like have ideas and thoughts about Hawaii, because it's in our culture, it's in our knowledge. And so it's a gift as we get older, and is that you have more and more experience to draw on. But if you're only memorizing words, you are separating yourself from this huge wealth of information, right? So by asking questions, you don't even have to consciously like get everything. Just by consciously going, well, what is the scene about? Now that's too broad a question, so we break it down into 4 questions, and that's, what are the relationships? Instead of who am I? Because who am I? I'm like, well, I'm a mom, and I'm, and if my son goes out there and turns on his video games while we're doing this, I'm gonna make sure my camera's off. Let's put it that way. How I'm gonna behave here is gonna be different than how I behave with him, based on the relationship. Acting is behaving, acting is doing. So if we start asking questions like, what are the relationships? There's so much, there's semantic, there's episodic memory. There's so many ways that our brain is making connections, and it's making neural connections to those words. So now that they stay and we retain. And then because it's the more specific we get it, the easier it is to retrieve it.
This is good. So, we're talking about Loren's book, Stop Memorizing Your Lines. So, why I wanted to show the book, because in the beginning, as I mentioned, you talked about Uta Hagen's 9 points, and then you gave your 9 points. So, in Uta Hagen's book, the 9 points that she brings are: who am I? What time is it? Where am I? What surrounds me? What are the given circumstances? What are my relationships? What do I want? What is in my way? What do I do to get what I want? So these are her 9 points. And a lot of acting teachers have points. So I just want to bring that up, that, we, whatever technique you have, a lot of times you have points. They may not be as clear as Uda's or as Ivana. Ivana has 12 points. But I want to focus on the points in this book, because I loved how you turned everything on its head in this book. You know, old school Lydia started with Uda Hagen. That was the first introduction that I had to acting. And I think many actors of our age
Me too.
started with Uda because she was, other than Stanislavski, she was the only one who had a book out
Hmm.
called Respect for Acting. So in your book, you talk about the 9 questions of intentional acting. So I want everybody to hear these 9 questions so that you know what this book is about, which will change how you bring your text to life. Okay, number one, what is the scene about? And then within that, you have what are the relationships? Where and when does it take place? What happens the moment before? So important. What happens the moment before? Your life doesn't start when the camera goes on, it starts before. What is the conflict between the characters? And then number 2 is how do I relate to my character in the scene? Or what would it be like if it happened to me? Number 3, what is the experience of the scene? Number 4, what do I need the other person to say or do? Or do or say. Okay. Number 5, why do I need my intention right now? So important because it's all about the now. Number 6, what's at stake if I don't get what I need? That is crucial, people. Number 7, what am I listening for? Number 8, who's the most important person in the scene? And number 9, how can doing this scene benefit me? I love the specificity of your questions. As we just went through Uda, she gives us the questions in a very generalized way, and it's up to you to make it specific. You don't really leave that to chance. You're like, you come digging in, what is this scene about? And I love how in the book you talk about the first question cannot be who am I, because then it's all about you. So let's talk about that, because most actors, that's where we start from. And before we get to the memorization, we start from who am I? And
Hmm.
you say, what is this scene about, people?
Right. I think it comes from my experience as a director, years of 30 some odd years of directing film, theater, is that you step outside. So the first question you answer in the third person. So you step outside and look at the whole picture. And I just see not enough actors do this. And what makes these questions a little bit revolutionary is that not enough people ask these questions, right? And even actors that have been really experienced, studied with so many teachers and read all the books, they're like, oh, this kind of puts it all in an order for me. It makes something that I can repeat. It gives me something that I don't forget. Like 12 points, that's a lot to remember. You go to shirt leaf, there's 16, they're guideposts. Like, that's a lot to remember. And some people are going to say, well, basically, I kind of have 12, but they fall together and they work and that I didn't plan that either. They just sort of showed up that they worked in order. So that first question is, we're standing on the outside going, what is this scene about, so you can get the full picture of the story. Too many actors, and I was one of them. It's like, how many lines do I have? Do I get to kiss the guy? And what are all the emotions and feelings that I get to dive into and enjoy, right? And instead, what I learned directing is, let's get the whole picture. And especially as an actor in television and film, when you get a script and you got to know what is the story that these directors and producers are looking for, especially in television. If you're getting into procedurals and episodics and even sitcoms, what's the style? What's the character? That's actually going to work into another book that I'm writing called The 8 Keys of Intentional Script Analysis. But building on that is that you've got to know the picture of what they want, and not enough actors do. They don't know what the production wants, and they're telling you when you read it and you go, what are the relationships? And I break down all the relationships in the room, because too often all we're focusing on as that actor is like my lines in this character, and I forget, oh, there's a social worker who is over here watching, or there's, you know, or there's another victim and they have an opinion and they speak, and even though they just have one line, how important that could be, right? So like I said, relationships puts us into behavior. And I think that Uta, you know, I know I read Uta Hagen years ago. I When I came up with my 9 questions, I honestly didn't. I I just I was like, oh, there's 9. Okay, 1 through 9. Okay, you know, I didn't. So it could have been in my semantic memory that she had 9 questions, but I didn't remember it consciously. And so then when I was doing my research and looking at all these different techniques and teachers and going, well, how am I different? I read her 9 questions. I'm like, well, they're, you know, that she's trying to get really specific, but some of them I brought them together and make them more specific, I think. And she also, I think what I also respected about her is she was looking for a procedure, because I'm a trained classical musician. I'm a trained ballet dancer. I'm a trained actor. I even went to cooking school. So I had chef and technique. So technique was something that you do over and over. And as athletes, you know, you how do you throw that ball? How do you you know, aim, shoot the basket, how, and the watching them on the football field as they run those laps back and forth. And that's what Uta Hagen was looking for. She was trying, and she talks about it, creating a bar, a basic, I call it a bar, about like in ballet bar, everybody, whether you are brand new or you are at the New York City Ballet or you're Barishnikov, and whether you're 3 or you're 83, you're doing the same bar, right? And it's this releves and plies and jumps, all these things that you do to warm up your body so that when you go to jump and do that beautiful tour jeté, the muscles just know what to do. And I believe that's what Uda was working for. She wanted an actor to have a technique that they could repeat on their own by themselves every single day, because she knew it was practice that would create that. But that's why she created 9 questions. But I don't think that that ever took off, you know. And I think a lot of another thing that I talk about in the book is that I feel like I got out of graduate school and I have all these ingredients of what acting is, but I didn't have the recipe. And think about how many things you can make with flour, butter, sugar, and eggs. I mean, hundreds of things, right? But it's how much egg or how much butter or how much salt or how much sugar, how much flour that you put these things together. And that's the same thing with acting. So they came together. And so in those 9 questions, the first one, trying to get back to your question, was on the outside. You want to be from the outside observing. You want to go, what is the whole story? What is the picture? Because then I know what director wants, and I know what the casting wants. I know what production wants, right? And so many people, and then I'll go, where does this take place? And when, too? And so many actors were like looking all over the script, or they're like, well, or they're guessing out of their head, and it's right there. It says interior or exterior, right? And then how we behave inside, you remember, go back to use your inside voice and your outside voice, and how we behave outside, how I behave in my own home office, and how I would behave in a co-working space, how we behave at the White House and how we behave at our mother's house. We just behave differently. And those things will instantly give you information that you don't even have to consciously maintain or hold. From the outside, you see all these pieces, then you start to see the picture of what's going on. But then you get into question number 2. And remember, you even tripped on it when you were saying the 9 questions. Yes. You said, how do I relate to my character and the circumstance, right? How do I relate to that? So now we understand the big picture. Now we can step into our character's shoes. And so the rest of the questions are from I. What do I think? What's my experience? And now that's where we're bringing the character and ourselves together.
I think that's fantastic. I'm going to go back to talking about the actor under pressure to deliver the lines. But when they come with the 9 questions, there's a freedom, and I wanted to read. I'm going back to the book in chapter 14. How can I practice my lines? Internalization versus memorization. And there's a young lady named Crystal who gives her perspective on the 9 questions. So she says, it becomes clear that Loren's approach to learning the beats of the scene instead of memorizing the dialogue was pivotal in my performance. The technique helps actors break down scenes into smaller, manageable units that focus on the emotional and physical shifts of the characters. By concentrating on the beats, I was able to identify my character's intentions and motivations within each moment, allowing me to navigate the dialogue with authenticity. And then in the next paragraph, you say the 9 questions incorporate the crucial principles of acting, but also provide a step by step, efficient process for mastering your lines. And that's what we're talking about is how do you master your lines? And I'm going to go back to something you said earlier, which is with time, that you have to learn technique first. So then you can, whenever you have to memorize lines, you have that system to take you to memorizing it with much more effortlessness.
Correct, but I would add more to that, okay? Because yes, this works as acting technique and memorization. They work together. And that's what I think is so cool about it, is because too often I spent all this time memorizing lines and then I would do my acting technique and they felt like two separate things. Or if you're learning the tips and tricks that people teach, like our mind palaces or mnemonic devices, where, you know, apparently just learn the first letter of every word, like now you've got this whole other thing. And if I'm trying to memorize all my emotions and all my intentions and all of that, it's like so much that how do you put all that together, right? So it is technique. But what I also want you to understand is that what you're really memorizing is the story. And what you're really internalize, and think about the difference between memorization, because that's why I said internalizing the script. I didn't say memorize. I do use the word memorize a lot, but it's memorize. I think of like, and I think record players are back in style. So those old vinyl records where it goes round and round in a groove, and it literally, that's what's going on in your brain, is your brain is finding the grooves and getting stuck and going into a groove. That's why when you learn something by rote, and I just have coined lately, rote don't work. When you learn something by rote, you're basically diving into these grooves, right? And that's why, you know, little kids particularly, they learn it and mom says it, then they say it, and mom says it, and then they say it, and it sounds exactly the same. And then as a director, I want to change it, and then like, and it sounds like this. I heard your note, but I'm going to say it like, because it's stuck in a groove. Think about it when you're really in character, when you're lost in that scene and it's the joy, the high of acting's there. You've internalized the character, right? But you've internalized the story too. What's been proven in science is that our brains will remember story over facts, over details, right? And so the words are just the details. But what the 9 questions are doing is that you are asking yourself questions that are helping you to build the story in your conscious and in your subconscious. And so, what my actors feel is that when they've, even after the first 2 or 3 questions, they're like, oh my God, I'm so much deeper into the story. And I also think it's teaching actors how to read a script, because I know we all know how to read and we know read English and it's words on a page, but you have to read what's really going on in that scene. So, for example, in class, we were working on a scene from The Pit. Boy, what a remarkable actors. And there's this whole beat where the victim goes into cardiac arrest. None of that's on the script. It just says, and they pull out a VTech. And so if an actor isn't really looking at the whole story and everything that's going on, and this is what we found, then they make their self tape, they're going to miss this huge event, which is a beat that's super important in that scene, and then wonder why I didn't get the job. And that's why understanding that story, and then when you understand the story, all the pieces come. That's now you're building ability to retain it. And then Crystal is also the one. She has a story about when she had a Zoom audition, and it was like producers, callback, big deal. And her whole computer wasn't working, nothing, the Zoom wasn't working, the computer wasn't working. She got on like 20 minutes late. She felt terrible. And then the casting director starts talking to her and talking to her. And she's like, and normally most actors are like trying to remember the scene and the line and be able to jump and why, and they hate it when casting directors are talking to them and laughing. And now we're going to do a dramatic scene. And she said she could just slip right in because she just thought of the story and the questions, and they came really quickly, and she just slipped right in. And the other thing is that when you're memorized, it's in rote, you're giving the same performance over and over again. Whereas when you have internalized it and you're living in this story, that when a director comes in and gives you a note and she says something that changes the story a little bit, one, you have so much more to give back to that director. And second of all, it's easier to shift. And that's what we just find with these 9 questions.
So in page 145, which I love this chapter, where you talk about beat it out. And I love how you break down how to mark the beats in a scene, because doing your beats can be very confusing to people. It's confusing if you're trying to explain it to them and they don't, it's like, what? But you make it so simple in this chapter. I mean, you really take us through it like if you're in fifth grade. You just give it to us. So you're going to do it this way, and then you do it this way, and you do it this way. And I do agree that when you can break down your beats and start looking at it in chunks, it is so much easier to memorize. And you're not freaking yourself out. And it's not about the word or the line, because it's about the story. And what is it that, okay, so I'm in this scene with Loren and we're discussing hats, but what I really want is to ask her for her necklace. And so how are we going to get from the hats to the necklace? And the beats in that scene will help get there quicker, as opposed to me trying to remember, oh, Loren, your hat is great. Ooh, look at that bracelet. How did you get that necklace? It just makes it so much easier if you know the beats. If you know you're starting from here and you're going to end up here, it's a map. It's a map of where you're going from the beginning of the scene to the end of the scene. But what I love about your book, I mean, I think first of all, you're an incredible director. I've said this to you before, having seen your work. You are so good with the actor. You're so good at putting them at ease. And so to see what you do and then to read the book, I go, oh my God, I get it. I get it. It all falls in place for me. It's such a great book, and I have to show it again. Stop memorizing. Stop memorizing your lines, people. Stop it. Stop it. Get all the information first. Don't go looking at the script. Get out of that habit of looking at the script to see how many lines you have and where are you in the script. Just look at the story first. It comes across so big in the book, and to get us out of that habit of me, which I love, in the intentional acting questions that you ask is, first question, what is the scene about? Not who am I, but what is the scene about? Because many of us have been conditioned to go to who am I? Who am I? What do I want? How do I do this? Instead of what is the scene about? What are the relationships that we're going to have in this scene with people? Where does it take place? So important. We need to know, is it the bedroom or the kitchen? Is it the living room or the backyard? Because it does make a difference.
Mhm.
You're not going to act out in the backyard the way you do in your bedroom. You're just not, unless you're a freak, but you're not going to do that.
Well,
So
and then that's
uh,
more information, right? If you're playing a freak and then you go and or you're like, well, why are they acting this way? Well, oh, maybe they're a freak or there's something going on. And that's another layer of character, right?
yes, I love, 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 love the book. So, what are three wrong questions actors ask? If they don't know the 9 intentional questions, what are three wrong questions they ask when they first get the script?
Well, first one's probably who am I, right? We've addressed that one. The next one is like, what are my emotions and what am I feeling? It's another one. I don't know them anymore because I don't use them. A big one, like I was thinking about when you were talking, that actors really miss is the conflict in the scene. And the conflict is gold. And so, and Uda says, what's stopping me? What was that question she says?
What is in my way?
What is in my way, right? Conflict is so important. It's like why we watch TV and why we go to the theater and why we watch movies. And in fact, there's just not even enough conflict for reality TV show. They have to make it up and they have to add more in, right? Because conflict is what makes us go, well, how's that going to work out? It's what we relate to. You know, go back to the Greeks. It's our catharsis of working out our own problems. So conflict's really important. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. And that's why I created a formula for it. You know, because people go, well, there's a war outside. I go, that's not the conflict in the scene. And then I made it more specific and I made it's not just the conflict in the scene, but the conflict between the characters. Make it even more specific. Well, they go, well, Susie wants to go out with him. That's not a conflict. A conflict is two opposing needs, right? I want Lydia to buy 100,000 books and she won't do it. That's a conflict. I want somebody to do something and they won't, and A wants B to do something and B won't do it. That's what happens is we conflict. And when you have that versus what's in my way didn't help me. I kind of go, well, and it didn't help me to even get over it. And I just remember taking a Tony Robbins seminar and it was one of those we had to do the karate chop through the piece of wood. And I feel bad for all the people who were with me because I couldn't get my hand through that piece of wood and he wouldn't let anybody leave till I got the wood broken. It took me 3 hours. But why I tell that story is because it fits perfectly. Because what's in my way was a piece of wood, right? And what's in my way is my brain goes, my hand cannot break a piece of wood. And so that's where I got stuck. And what I had to do was get past that piece of wood to the other side, is what they kept telling me. You have to think past it. And so when there's a conflict, if I just think my mom's going to tell me no, and maybe I was just raised that way. She said, no, I don't do it, you know? And so now I'm shut down versus mom said no. And I need that cookie and I'm going to get her to buy that cookie. Now I'm going to find your brain literally will find a billion different ways. If you have a very specific intention, your intention is connected to your conflict. What do I need them to do or say? And so then if I'm fighting for that, your brain will find when you have, it's called perspective memory, your brain will find a bunch of ways to solve that problem. But what's in my way didn't let my brain solve a problem. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. You actually say that in the book. When you create questions, your brain creates meaning
and answers. It searches for answers.
Yes. And so with acting, conflict is always necessary, even if your line is just good morning, even if you just have one word, good morning, there's a conflict.
Well, what I say is that there's 99.9% of the scenes are conflict. You know, even weddings. Why do they have weddings? But then at the wedding, there's always somebody in the audience who's upset with somebody. There's always still a conflict, right? So that's why I say if there's no conflict in the scene, you focus on creating the experience of the scene. And a lot of people go, what is this experience? And to me, it's sad to me that got lost, because that was Stanislavski's original languaging, was that acting is the art of experiencing and creating. And so I think what makes a great self-tape is not if you're memorized, it's if you created the experience of the scene.
Give us an example, because I think this is huge.
Yeah, I do too. This is a crux for me because I don't talk about emotions. I always say I'm the weird acting coach who doesn't talk about emotions.
Because the emotions come out of the behavior, not just, and you have a lot of actors out there thinking it's all about emoting. I cried. Oh my god, you should have seen me. I laughed so hard. But that's not the issue. It's better not to have an emotion and be intentional about what it is that you want, and the audience have the emotion.
Exactly. How because that's when we watch stuff and you're like you watch something sentimental and we don't enjoy it because that actor is emoting and feeling and we're like, uh, they're feeling. So I don't get to feel it. And the catharsis, going back to Greeks, is goes back to it's the audience to have the catharsis, right? And conflict, if I want you to buy 100,000 books and you say, no way, I'm not doing that, guess what? I'm going to have some feelings about it. Lydia, I just did your podcast. It's the least you can do for me.
Audience, there's 130,000 of you. I need you all to buy the book so she can get the
Yay!
100,000 books sold. Go, girl. You
I
go.
didn't I didn't even think of that. But see, but look at like, but I'm fighting for an intention, and you must have felt something that made your brain go like this, right? But also, you're going to feel something when there's a conflict. You're going to feel it. So, well, you want to go back to what is the experience of this thing, right? We would talk about the
Yes.
experience, and Stanislavski talks about the experience of this thing because if you think of any kind of first day of school, the day you get married, the day you leave home and the first day of your new apartment, the first day of a job, like the last day of a job, a breakup. Each one of these has so many emotions. And if you focus on one, you're doing it, you're not living, you're not showing human experience. So, what it says, truthfully living an imaginary experience in imaginary circumstances. The circumstances being, we want to see human behavior. That's what acting is. So, if for the first day of school, I'm just like, yay, I'm super excited about the first day of school. Or like, oh, I'm scared out of my mind. I'm missing that maybe it's both. Maybe it's all of it. And so if we get into the experience, and it starts with what do I see, hear, smell, touch, and taste? Because again, your senses will, when you connect into your senses, one powerful memory tool, it's called sensory memory. And you are implanting, you're encoding, and you're retaining information every time you connect to your senses. Second of all, your senses will then lead you to emotions because when you're like, what do I see, hear, smell, touch, taste? Just think of, mine is always associated with food. But like if I think of traveling and I think of, this incredible meal that I had in Paris, and now all of a sudden it's all of these things that I remember, all the experiences. And I even remember getting like this bone marrow I was excited about, but I was like, am I going to get sick? There was a combination of being excited and I want to eat it, but I'm afraid, what if I eat too much? And what if I got sick? And it's a combination, it's an experience. And that's why do we watch the movies? To have an experience. So what does casting and want to do when they're watching your movie? I called it a movie. Your self-tape, it's like a little movie, right? If they could sit back and go, wow, I feel like I'm watching the show. Oh, that makes me laugh. I feel like I'm watching a sitcom, or my heart's broken. Why do people watch the Rachel McAdams audition over and over and over again? Because she creates an experience. And the casting, what are they going to do?
And she's present moment to moment. You talk about if you're too much into the details, you can't go moment to moment because you're holding on to the details.
If you're just worried about the words, you can't be present.
And that reminds me of something that Roy London used to say to us all the time. Okay, take it all in, now let it all go.
Mm-hmm.
Because now in the performance you have to let go of everything and just be present, just be in the now. Because if that actor does something that you never thought about, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that actor all of a sudden, you're sitting at a table and they just throw coffee at you, and that wasn't in the script? You can't go, wait a minute, that wasn't in the script. You got to go with it. So anyway, I don't know why I thought of that, but the experience. We're talking about the experience. You have to bring the experience into the scene.
Right. And so, and what happens when casting or directors are watching you and they feel like they are having the experience, that then also what happens is a certain amount of, it's called suspension of disbelief. Your brain, think of all the movies you've watched of James Bond or all these different people, all the action movies where, the hero is like bang, bang, and everybody dies and everybody shoots at the hero and everybody misses, right? But we go along with it because we suspend our disbelief, right? And when you can have casting suspend their disbelief, what happens is literally a part of your brain goes quiet, and all the judgmental part, the part that judges and criticizes and goes, wow, why is she wearing, and she should have done, and he did it, and those lines weren't right, that goes to sleep because they're just living they're enjoying the experience that you're having.
Yes, and there's nothing as delicious as seeing an actor being present and giving you an experience. There's nothing like it. I mean, it's like a really great piece of music. When you're at the Hollywood Bowl, or you're hearing it live, and it just touches the deepest part of you. It's like you're touched. And when you were talking about that, I was reminded, one of my favorite movies is, well, I have a lot of favorite, but one of my favorite movies is Out of Africa.
Oh yeah.
I went for Robert Redford. I stayed for Meryl Streep. I saw that movie. I've seen that movie over 100 times because she is so into the experience of what is going on in her world, that every time I see that movie, I will cry at the same place, not because of the scene, but because she was living it for the first time. And subconsciously, you don't realize it, but when you see a really good piece of work on camera, it hits you. It's like, think of The Godfather. When you watch The Godfather, no matter how many times you see it and you know what's going to happen and you know how it's going to end, it still gets you because those actors were so present in the moment. And I think that is key for any actor, is that you want to be able to just breathe in be it on camera or on stage. You want to breathe so we feel this is legit, this is a real thing that's happening, that we go, are you okay? Oh, are you okay? Because you didn't look okay up there. That it really touches you, it really gets you. And I love your 9 questions of intentional acting. I just want to
And the other thing about experiencing is that you brought up out of Africa. I don't even know what year that was, but nowadays, with budgets, with Hollywood being as crazy as it is, and with all the AI and all the technology, you have to be able to work on a green screen. You've got to be able, like if you work with James Cameron and if you've watched how they shoot Avatar and all the buttons and all the things and all the all the cameras in their faces, and they're in a studio, and there's nothing that would say that I'm in that world of Avatar. Nothing. Or if you're there in a partially animated partially movie, or Jurassic Park, like I had an actor and he said he was a scientist in Jurassic Park, and all they did is they put a tennis ball at the end of a broomstick and put it in their face and said, there's the dinosaur. So you have to create your experience. You have to use all your senses. What do I see, hear, smell, touch, taste? What does that dinosaur smell like? What does their breath feel like? What's the temperature? And live in that experience. And that is a skill that an actor, I think, is even more and more important because of AI and because of the way the business is shifting so much and budgets are cut, that they're going to green screen a lot more things and or throw it in in post, and you have to be able to live in that experience regardless if there's a camera in your face or a tennis ball in your face or a dinosaur in your face.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I just want to say yes, ma'am, to that. In the questions, what's at stake if I
Mm.
don't get what I need? Because that could be a trap for an actor to give up too quickly, I think. An actor who is not coming to win, but is coming with, I don't know how to crack that wood. I can't get that wood. It's not going to happen.
But what's at stake is I have 30 people who are going to be here all night with me. And how awful and embarrassing is that, that I am the one who's kept all these people here? You know, that's what's at stake for me, is that everybody's going to be mad at me. Right. So it kind of drove me more to get my hand through that. But the piece that I think, and it's interesting, the piece that you might be missing and the piece that I was missing till I wrote the book, and now I was in the rewriting of the book, and I'm like, something's not working here. And it was this guy who was he was doing some editing. He was a great actor, Charlie Curlin, and just got to give him the kudos for helping me find the reward risk reward system. Okay, so question number 6, what, or 5, why do I need this right now? The difference between motivation and intention. This is another place where I debunk myth, right? Like, there's so many teachers and so many everybody who talk about motivation, intention, objective, goal, purpose as it's all the same thing. And somehow I intuitively knew that motivation and intention were separate because I made 2 questions. But it wasn't until I was in an IMAX watching this IMAX movie on the Tour de France, and they talked about that literally motivation is in the middle of your brain in your VTA, and then your intention is in your executive functioning in your prefrontal cortex, right? So what happens is you can have an intention like, I want to quit smoking, or I'm going to stop eating sugar, but if there's no reward or risk involved, then I'm probably not going to do anything about it. You know, when I had a high school reunion, I think I lost 5 pounds before I went to my high school reunion because there was something at stake. There was also a reward, right? So what happened is, I think in acting, we always talk about what's at stake in the scene, but we don't talk about reward. And what we're missing is in our brains is that we are constantly, our brain is naturally in this flux of risk reward, risk reward, risk reward, right? It's like, do I eat that brownie? Well, it's delicious. Oh my God, I can just think about what it's going to taste in my mouth, and then about, I'm gluten free. The risk of eating that brownie will make my stomach sick. I'll be in the bathroom, and right? So, but my brain will go, should I? Should I
The
not? Should I? Should I
reward
not?
is that it's going to taste delicious.
And that's even what goes on, like in all the movies at the 3/4 point in the movie. That's what the hero's dealing with. Do I risk speaking up? I was just watching a show last night. Do I risk speaking up to my father and being the man that I want to be, or do I just play it safe and make sure I get my millions of dollars in my inheritance? Which do I do? Risk and reward. But there's so much about focusing on its stake, though. You're right. If you just give up on it, but if you know that you're going to have a juicy reward, and that's what drives athletes, right? Why do we naturally put our arms up in a V, which I think is fascinating? We will not, well, I did it. Yes. And it's a natural V, it's a natural victory, it's natural reward. But reward will drive us. And like you said, sometimes I'm going to eat the brownie. I'll take the reward over the risk, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, and so find when he helped me find that and realize that, and then if you want to talk about where is the character's internal conflict, that's where the entire character's internal conflict is. It's dealing with the risk and reward.
That's good. That's good. This book is so good. What I like in the book is that you break down certain words and give us the definition, which is so important. It's not only helpful, but it paints a different picture. Like when you go, what is acting? You break it down. One of the other places where you go from objective to intention, and you see how weak objective is when you put it next to the definition of intention.
Mm,
That and And so what the book does is it heightens certain words from words that we used to use in our craft, because if you're over 40, I think maybe you have a certain image of certain words in your acting. I need to, what's my motivation, what's my objective, how, what do I want here, who am I? Whereas when you start talking about it, you give it such a different twist that you go, oh, wow, I didn't think of it that way. I didn't think of the risk and reward. I didn't think of later for motivation. I was going to say a bad word. Later for motivation, we have to be intentional. We have to be intentional with what we're trying to get. We also have to keep the conflict going. On page 13, which I really love this, convergent thinking or single focus thinking trains the mind to solve problems with a single answer that is taught to be correct. Whereas divergent thinking encourages the mind to find multiple solutions through different thought processes. This is where you sold me on the book, because as someone who is dyslexic,
Oh, yeah.
I
Mm.
am always thinking of of variables. It's just this one way. I'm always, okay, well, if I can't get through the door, can I get through the roof? Do I go through the basement? Do I go through the window? Do I break a hole in the wall? I'm not the person that goes right to the door. It's like, and sometimes that gets me in trouble.
That makes you a great actress too.
But I loved it because what you did was you gave permission to those actors who may have learning disabilities. And a
Hmm.
lot of actors have learning disabilities that they don't talk about. It's like, how do you memorize the lines? I remember early on, because I had dyslexia, oh my God, I would panic. But I learned back then the beats and the chunking, and that made it so much easy for me. So to see that in your book, I was like, yeah, bravo, bravo, bravo. I love it. I love it. But it is true that how you operate from your brain in grabbing the material, and now what do? You have two ideas of how you could play the character. So where do you go? I could do it this way or I could do it this way. What makes the better sense? Or do I just go with my gut?
Right. But what I think of too is the 9 questions, what they do is they are informing your gut, right? They are, it's intentional. Like there was so many times when I gave a great performance, but I couldn't repeat it because it just seemed, I was present, I was there, it was great. But then, and that's the problem, Hollywood, you got to go repeat it. I had a client and she was on Grey's Anatomy and she's the mother of one of the lead characters who dies, and she had to cry on cue 17 times. Like 17 takes. That is hard. When you have to repeat something, if you're not intentional, like having the 9 questions, but it also is broad enough because they're questions and they're opening up your brain to the divergent thinking, to so many different possibilities. Your brain is gonna filter because that's the only way you can survive. Your brain will filter, and we can trust that. But then you have more choices, you have more opportunities, and it's really, what I believe it's doing is it's informing your gut. And that was always true of me. I had this gut response to the script, and I tell actors, write it down. Like when you first read that script, start writing down everything that your gut, oh, that this is like I Love Lucy, or this reminds me of, and this is kind of like, and this is really, this, I remember when I was a kid and this happened to me. Write all that stuff down, your gut instincts, right? Then do the work of breaking that, then doing the 9 questions and breaking down the scene. And then that's going to inform your gut. And you might go back and go, oh, see, I was right. Now I know why that relationship is that way. Now I know why that triggered me into feeling like a kid. Now I remember this. And so the questions being open-ended questions, being questions that allow your mind to think of different possibilities, will then give you more possibilities. Yeah, but it also allows you, it's more human experience because our characters, are have divergent minds. We live, that's how we live. We live. That's real true human experience. The convergent was what happens when all you do is worry about your lines. And all you're doing is thinking about what's my next word and what's my next line. Now your brain is focused on getting it right. Your brain is focused on this one way of thinking, and it can't be open to those other possibilities. And that's why questions are so powerful.
And it hurts your performance
It will
because
ultimately.
you're not you're not being able to take from the other person. You're not open, you can't listen, you're so worried that nothing's coming in.
Exactly.
It's like being single. If when you're single, it's all about you, right? But then, when you get married or you have kids, it's not about you at all. You
Mhm.
don't have a name. They call you so and so's mom, so and so's wife, so and so's husband. And so which is the best place to be because then you can operate, you can move about the cabin freely, right?
Yeah,
That's how I see it. It's like,
I love
you
that.
know, you're not by your, you're not me focused. And I think, I always like I think this about my actor friends who aren't married, who don't have kids, who are a little older in years, and I go, you didn't get the memo yet. It's not about you. It's not about you, my friend. There's a whole
Right.
world out there.
And that's why I have a whole question on who's the most important person in the scene. And it's rhetorical. It's the same answer every time. The other person. And if you think about, like Lydia, if you go back to one of your best performances, where was your attention? Was it on your lines? Was
Never.
it on your face, making sure you had the right facial
Never.
expressions? Were you thinking about, did I have the right emotion? Were you thinking about, oh, I
No,
moved my arm on the right line? No.
it was always about that person.
And so the question is there to remind you when you're like, oh, I'm worrying about my line, or I'm thinking about, do I have lipstick on my teeth? Oh, that's about me. Get over there. Get more interested in the other person. That's also triggering your ability to remember, to recall, and to retrieve information when you're focused on then hearing the other person, right? And it also, it drops everybody's nerves. Your nerves like fall away when you get so much more interested in the other person. But if I'm worried about what I look like and if I'm doing it right, I'm going to get nervous.
And even when they're not giving you anything, they're giving you a big gift. I think it's important for actors to know that. Because how many times do we hear actors say, but they weren't giving me anything? Oh my God, they weren't? And you didn't take advantage of that? They gave you nothing and you didn't go in on them. At that moment, it's like, what is wrong with you? Look at me. I'm talking to you.
Right.
That's
Yes.
an opportunity, right? That because that's a real conflict. They're not giving you anything. I can't tell you early on in my career where I walked out and I was like, they didn't give me anything. They were like plywood. And then I got it. I'm gonna use that. They don't give me anything. I'm gonna stop the scene till they look at me and then I'll start again.
Yeah, and that's what it goes back to. And I talk about this in the book too, about intention. Like a scene needs an intention. I think maybe that when you went back, like what are the biggest mistakes actors do? I can't tell you how many actors never think of an intention or what do they need the other person to do or say. That doesn't even occur to them. And they're so busy on their emotions and their feelings and who I am, right?
And they never think of the story.
But the intention, you have to have that. That's the energy that exchanges between two people. That's what keeps, and that's the conflict and the intention. It makes all this. It's like it's the gas in the tank, right? It's what moves it. And sometimes you don't even have to have the best or the perfect or the right gas. You just have to have gas. So in that moment when you're like, they're giving me nothing, would you look up off the script and look me in the eye? If that's your intention in that scene, you'd be surprised at how that will bring that whole scene awake and alive. And maybe maybe instead you're like, I want them to kiss me, but and this is still going to drive them to connect to you, and that makes that scene 100% better. So it doesn't always matter if you've got the intention perfect. What's most important is that you have an intention and something you need that other person to do or say.
One thing you said, and you said this when we talked last, is that if actors have these 9 questions, they can coach themselves.
Yeah.
That the whole purpose for these 9 questions are, if they don't have time to get coached, if they don't have the finances to get coached, and they have been under this teaching for a while, because it's not just ask the 9 questions and then you're set, because if you don't know what the hell to do with these 9 questions, they're not going to help you. But in working this out for a period of time, you should be able to coach yourself.
I think self efficacy is so important for an actor. And it was frustrating to me that I could deliver a great performance in acting class or in front of that teacher. And that's what happened to me. I was like brilliant in conservatory, and I was brilliant in class and with these teachers and with these students that I know. And then, or they just coach me or say one thing or, or any like that. But then when I got into, I had an audition and I had to prepare it on my own. And now I had to walk in that room on my own and I had to be ready on my own. I didn't get the same brilliance that I had when I was been coached. And I felt dependent on my teachers. I felt dependent. And this is, I hear a lot, like actors who are like, well, I got to get coached for every single audition. And Loren, will you coach me for this audition? And the way that I like to work is I want you to know the 9 questions first. I want us to have a private coaching where we can, a couple of them, we can work through these, because my actors, what happens and what works really well is if they get an audition, they do their 9 questions or the 8 keys that I also teach. They do that, then they present, and I can read somebody's 9 questions and I can tell you if the scene's going to work or not. I can tell just by reading their answers, because I'm basically understanding the thoughts of the actor, right? The more in depth you are with it, and they're in and like, again, they're not, it's just because they're questions doesn't mean they have to be perfect answers. This is a worksheet. It's a work in progress. And even just, I can't tell you, if you're clearer on your relationships, if you're clear on where it takes place and you're getting that from the script, if you have a conflict and a moment before an intention, you are ahead of so many actors, because there's just so many actors who are thinking about their lines and their emotions. They don't know all this. If you know this story, you're going to be a step ahead. So you can do it even imperfectly. I've had students I teach at the SAG after conservatory, and I teach an hour and a half class. I've had students who then learn just the first couple questions, and they take them and they go off and they book a job. So I wanted to have it for myself. I wanted actors to have that self-efficacy. I honestly don't want the call at 10 to midnight saying, Loren, which take should I pick? And I think that it's important that because you can just go broke being an actor. You know this. You can just be broke paying for all of these things. A lot of my actors are booking stuff and they're not getting coached by me. They're doing the work on their own, or they've built it. They've gotten so good at it that they know, or they know when they go, like, I had a student in England, and she had an audition for Martin Scorsese, and she's like, okay, this is a Scorsese project. Here's my work, my 8 keys, my 9 questions. Here's my tape. Can we work on it more? Now we can take it to the next level, because to get you from 0 to 100 in an hour, and that's usually what somebody can afford, right? If they can afford that, that's hard. But if you know how to prep it and you've done the work, and now you're like, I'm going in for Martin Scorsese, and now how can we even improve on it? How can we find more choices? How can we shoot it together so I'm reading with a good reader? Then you have more possibilities. And so, yeah, it was just really important to me that actors have self-efficacy, and also so you can walk away from an audition. Because the other thing is, I just hear people judging their own, well, I missed a line, or it felt good, or the worst one was that I thought I was amazing and they weren't, or they thought they were amazing but they didn't tell the story that was on the page, and then like, why didn't I get the part? It felt great. I don't know why I didn't get it. I should get that part. It felt great. Well, and that's why the 9 questions will keep you honest, right? They'll keep you in the story.
To take these 9 questions and really answer them per every set of sides or script that you get. They're always going to be different. It's not the same answers. You're coming really thinking about story and then answering it according to the story that is on the paper. And then you can be able to deliver the material based on the story, not on your feelings, but
Mhm.
you're connecting with the characters, that everything then comes together.
Yeah, and a lot of people just feel like they fall into character. They also memorize faster. Like I had this one student recently, and she said every time she got a script, she read it 17 times. I'm like, why 17? And there was no right. She said, I don't know. I just do. But you can't do that if you have 4 in one day, which I had students who have 4 clients who've got 4 auditions in one day. You can't do that. And she was at work, and then she had this audition. It was a good one, a really good audition. And she was at work, and she thought she'd get to work at lunchtime, and she didn't. And she brought it home, and then something else came up with one of her kids. And then she went and she said, she goes, I pulled out the script and I knew it. I knew it. And she said, I just had to look at my 9 questions again to get really clear. And that's also by having the worksheet. I also, how many clients of mine have auditioned in October and then booked the job in February? And they're like, what did I do on that tape 5 months ago? Right? If you've written it down and you're clear, you have that worksheet, then you can show up and deliver what you delivered that booked the job. Right? So it is very practical.
You just said something. I want to make this clear for the actor that is watching this. Always write down your beats, break down your scenes, ask your questions, and create a folder that you can put that information in. So
Yes.
if you get a callback 2 months later, or a month later, or even a week later, and you've been doing so many other things, you don't have to worry about, oh my God, what did I do? You actually still have the stuff to help you. I think that's an area where actors sometimes don't see the importance of keeping all your paperwork. It's not just enough to write down the questions, but keep it in a safe place. Because even if you don't get a call back, but maybe 6 months down the road, you get a piece of material that's similar to what you just did, you can always go back and go, what did I do in that? Oh, was that a strong choice, or should I come up with a stronger choice? So if you don't have the money or the time to get coaching, you have this gold sheet that will help you get to where you need to go. It reminds me of, I'm sorry, I have to go back to my teacher, Roy London, who I was with for 9 years, and he had given us 12 steps. And I had taken it and created a little index card where I had all the steps. And it was in my Benjamin Franklin little planners where you had the little in sleeve, the Franklin planners. So I would take it out, and then I would write all my answers down, and I could go and do it. And the other thing he gave, which is very similar to what you do, is that he was very big on us being able to direct ourselves when we didn't have proper direction. Where was I on? Where was I off? So if you had the opportunity to do another take and you didn't feel solid, you could clean it up for the second take. That you weren't freaking yourself out, but you were like, okay, I could make that choice a little more stronger here. I wasn't really fighting for what I wanted. I was a little wimpy here. I let them win. I can't let them win this time. You may not get the opportunity, but if you get a second chance to do a retake, that becomes gold, because you can process those 9 questions and go, okay, I didn't feel as good in my steaks. Okay, so let me, okay, real quickly, because you're going to have a couple minutes before they do the retake. They're
Exactly.
going to set up something is off, they got to fix something, so you'll have a couple of minutes to reorganize and be able to redirect yourself in a way that makes your performance stronger. So I love these 9 questions. I love this book. I love what you've brought to the table, and I'm just so proud of you. I just think this is
Thank
so
you.
amazing. Is there anything that we haven't talked about in the book that you think people should know about the book?
There is one thing that you keep talking about beats, and I want to get some clarity on beats for people. Okay, one of the things I talk about is going through the 9 questions first and then doing the beats. Okay, and the beats, when you keep talking about chunking, that is another way of memorization. That's like you go to the grocery store and you're like, well, this is the dairy products, these are, I'm going to get these over the vegetables, and these are the canned foods. We chunk that, right? Because we can't remember 10 random things, but if we, and that's, we chunk it, right? But I want to just really instill that, yeah, beats are all over the place. And that's why I broke that down. And it really taught me how to do them based on film, right? And it's hard. And every script's going to be different. I just want to say, like, there are times I have to go through. I remember I had, it was in a feature, and I had to go through my 9 questions 4 times, and every time it got more and more refined. I'm just going deeper into the story, deeper into the character, finding new stuff, right? But beats come after you do the 9 questions. And then they become so that you know the story based on, and then you're also, the other way that you're memorizing it is, think about it. You're reading it and you're answering the questions. Then as you're working through the questions, you're getting the story even deeper. And then you go through the beats and you're going deeper through it again. And now breaking the beats into these chunks, so then you can go, this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens. So then you can even just memorize the beat. So if you get stuck in a scene, and when you have one of those really long scenes and your partner goes off on the wrong paragraph and they went way over there and you're supposed to be over here, but if you know the beats, then you know how to get back. It's like a map, like directions on a road, like directions to the airport. And you're like, whoa, why did you turn down Van Owen? Wait a minute, just go down Victory and we'll get right back there, right? And that's how the beats can work. But I encourage you, I suggest doing it in the order that I do it, which is do your 9 questions and then go through your beats. And they will actually even make more sense, and they may even take you back and inform. Don't be afraid to go back and check your answers again.
What other thing you just brought up? Someone misses their lines. You're doing a scene with somebody, you're cooking with gas, they miss their line. What advice do you give them? Yes, you come back to it, but if they've gone down like 2 paragraphs, what do you say to that actor to help them back?
I think if you're memorized by rote, right? And if you're just learning the words and the lines, then when that person goes off and they don't say, sweet Lord Jesus, and you're like, they didn't say that now, and that's my cue line. And now that means I don't know what's that line, and now I'm lost, right? Because I'm only thinking about words and listening for words, right? But if you've done, the story, right? And now all of a sudden they're at the end of the story. You're like, wait a minute, remember when this happened? Your brain will have the divergent, the ability to be more flexible because you've got this whole story. And so it's going to be easier to pull yourself and lead them in a new direction.
So if he doesn't say the line or she doesn't say the line, maybe I could say the line and then go into my line.
True, right? 9 times out of 10, more likely to be more flexible, more the story better. But if you've only learned the words, you are going to get lost, and then it's going to be about, well, let's find that right word instead of where are we in the story.
How important is it for actors to be flexible?
It just is. You just have to be. I mean, I don't know how you can be an actor if you're not flexible, honestly, because you got to be flexible with direction from casting, flexible from direction from, gosh, getting your audition and getting the sides, and then finding out they didn't give you one page of the sides, or then you walk in the room and then they give you a whole different character. And that's where, if you have that ability, I talk about that in a book about a student of mine. She was on a Zoom audition, and the casting director's like, you know what, you'd be perfect for this other role, and hands them a script. And that's always like the best and worst time, because let's say you did have the money and you did spend time coaching and you had a week to prepare it, and now you're all ready, you've got this great performance, and there you are, and then they go, but you'd be great for this other line, and let me hand you this. And that's what I think about acting technique. And what I love about the 9 questions too is that when you know these 9 questions, you can use it for a cold read the second that they hand it to you. If you started to train your brain to go, what's the scene about? What are the relationships? Where does it take place? What's happened? What's the conflict? A wants B to do something and B won't do it. Bingo, got it. Okay, I'm ready to go. Right? But if I'm like, what emotions are going on here? I've got to learn my lines. I can't do that in 2 minutes or less. And yet, so much of casting is done when they go, I want you to read this. So, flexibility is just so important, because, and having a technique that's going to be flexible for you, I think is also important, because I see too many actors turn things down because I can't memorize all those lines, or I don't have time to do 7 auditions in 1 week, and they each have 10 pages, or I hear this all the time. Well, I couldn't memorize 10 pages, so I did 3, so I just did the first scene for them. And then they're like, and I should have gotten the part. Or then I also know some really high level older actors who are like, they're posting the words on posting their words on their wall. And this one actor, and I'm like, well, what? He goes, I don't know why I'm not booking. And he goes, well, what kind of feedback do you get? He goes, well, the only feedback I get is they say it sometimes sounds like I'm reading my lines. Oh,
Because you are. You
because you
are.
are. But I've heard this from like older high level actors, that even being able to self tape has made them even lazier, right? Or ear prompters, or all those little tricks.
We're going off of the book for a second because this is really important right here, this conversation of actors not being prepared and not being ready to play. Because being flexible means you're ready to play. I've been on the other side of casting, sitting and watching actors come in and have little meltdowns because they missed a line or the material or the reader. I remember reading with this guy and I accidentally went up on a line and he went ballistic.
Wow,
Just
yeah.
I was like, oh my God. I said, I'm so sorry. Let's start that again. And to this day, this actor looks at me with such disdain because of that one thing. And I go, it's not that serious, bro. You gotta, but I've seen where actors or they're being asked to do an improv. Okay. Put the lines down. We're just gonna improv the scene,
Yeah.
and the sheer panic that comes over them. And so as a teacher, as a coach, as a director, how how would you lead an actor who is in that mindset? Because I believe it's a mindset. I think that there's a stuck to them. I'm not going to memorize the lines until I get the job. I'm not going. So I'm gonna, and because I can do it on as a self tape, I just put it in front of me.
Well, it just comes to the proof is in the pudding. So let me ask you, did that guy get cast who had that meltdown?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever cast him in anything?
No, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. And so then I just ask, the actors, if you're putting your lines on your wall, are you getting the job? Are you booking it? Is it working? No, and that flexibility is yeah, and to change that mindset, like, well, it's just a matter of, if you don't change the mindset, then you're probably just gonna at some point give up acting. You're probably and gonna do it with resentment, and it's all their fault, and it's it's because the industry did this, and it's because of self tapes. But that's the other thing, is I hate seeing actors so disempowered. And that's another reason why I wanted this book to come out. I wanted people to have more people to have this technique, is because I find it to be incredibly empowering, and I've even had actors who are like, who've done this and said, I guess I don't really want to be an actor because I don't want to do all that work. Good. Now you know what it takes to be prepared, right? Like you said, you got to be prepared, and not enough of these actors and not enough people know. I got a graduate degree. I didn't exactly know how to prepare. And then when I'm starting to teach people how to prepare, I'm like, this is how you prepare. And that just builds confidence. Like, confidence is a byproduct of my classes. It's the number one thing my students walk away saying. I feel more confident because they know what they're doing.
Because they have those 9 steps, they have those questions, they can rely on something. I think a lot of actors don't take classes, or I shouldn't even say actors. A lot of people out there think that they can act, do not
Mm,
take classes because they think
mm.
it is so easy. I could do that. It's like when I used to do stand up, I would hear people go, I could do stand up. No, you can't. No, you can't. Just because you can tell a joke to your friends does not mean you can do stand up.
Mm. No,
There, and it takes
not at all.
time. You've said this a few times, how much time it takes. It takes time to learn a technique. It takes
Mhm.
time to get confident in the technique. You can't take a 6-week course and then
Yeah.
deem yourself an actor. You wouldn't want a doctor who said he took 6 weeks on
Right.
heart surgery, and you're going to let them cut you up. No, I want somebody who's done it hundreds and hundreds of
Right.
times, so when they get to me they know a lot.
And the competition's too steep. I mean, there's probably 3,000 people being submitted for every role. If you're getting, it's like Stuart
Well,
Stone always
well,
meant.
well, let me just say this. The competition is not steep because most actors are doing exactly what we're saying. They tape
Yeah,
their lines, they don't do the work, they don't prepare, they
yeah.
don't consider the material. They think they're enough just showing up on camera. And
Mm,
it goes
mm,
back to the older actor thinking that they should, I got credits. They
right.
should just hire me. They don't respect themselves enough to bring
Mm.
their A game. They think they could get away with just showing up.
But what I want to add to that is I think a lot of people don't know what it is. That's why I go back to the definition of acting is doing. And that's why a whole chapter on technique. Because I was like, what technique did I use? I didn't understand what technique was, right? What is acting technique? And then there's so many people taking classes, and they're given a scene, and it's often from a play. They give a scene, they go memorize their lines, they're told to rehearse, they show up in class, and then it's a scene study, and then the teacher critiques them, gives them feedback. They go, okay, and then but they don't have technique, and they don't know how to do that themselves. And so it's like, people are saying, this is how you fish. Here, go catch the fish this way, do it this way, do it that way. But then when it comes to, you have to go find your own fish and catch it, you don't know how to do it. And so I just think there's just the benefit of the doubt is that they didn't always know what to do to prepare. And they didn't know how to get offline. Nobody teaches you how to memorize lines. And in fact, in my research of all these, Stanislavski, he said he lost 25% of his performance because he couldn't remember his lines. I read Uta Hagen, all of them, Ivana Chubbuck, all of these books. They're 300 pages, and they have one paragraph that basically is saying, yeah, you need to memorize your lines. Or, before you memorize your words, you really got to think about, like, paraphrase them or say them in different, or think about what the words are that they mean. And that's not enough. That's not enough. That's why I go into such detail of it.
Beat it out. Beat it out. You got to beat it out.
Dude, but they just don't. So I give people the benefit. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I think it's important, because people don't know what technique is. People don't know that acting is doing. People don't know where to start when they get an audition, and that's what makes people freak out. That's what makes them get overwhelmed. That makes them late to turn in an audition, or they do it late. Whereas, when you have a technique that you like, oh, I know what to do, and I get up and it's fun. Like I have actors where this, I've had actors who are like, I don't want to stop doing the scene. It's so much fun. Let's just keep doing it. Like, let's do it again, right? And that's what it's supposed to be. It's a play. We're supposed to play.
Part of it is loving the craft. And you have to get craft in order to love it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just thinking I memorize the lines, I go up on, I go on set and I have my blocking, that's not sufficient. Or I'm doing this to be rich and famous, that's not sufficient. That, you have to, that it takes time. And I think, I'll say it again, it takes time to really hone a technique. I remember being 19 years old studying with Stella Adler, and the first day she said, it takes 20 years to be an actor. I was like, I don't have 20 years. I need to do it now.
That's another reason why where the 9 questions came from is because here I come out of conservatory where I'd spent 2 almost 3 years of being in class and doing all those amazing Meisner and Stanislavski and all these great exercises, right? But then I got here and and people are like, you need to teach acting. Okay, what am I teaching? And now I get actors who are like, well, I have an audition tomorrow and they've never taken an acting class, or I also had agents sending me kids and managers sending me kids who had never taken an acting class, and they're like, we don't really want them to get trained because we don't want them to lose their natural ability. And they and right and so and that's such a myth, and then they throw me an actor, they give me an hour and it's their lead in a TV show, and I'm like, how can I get you from 0 to 1,000 in an hour if you've never done anything in acting, right? And so, but that's what this city does. That's what happens in LA, and that's what happens. Actors are like, I want to go audition. I want to get to work. So that's why I love the 9 questions are fast. You can get to work fast. You can learn technique quickly. You can learn memorization. But the craft, as you said, is technique. That's another word for technique, is craft. But the craft and being able to be fluent in it and be able to be flexible in it and be able to really, have it, that's what takes time. But you can, if you have something that you can repeat and do, and you know what you're doing and it's broken down, that's what I did. And so that people could get to work fast. And by the way, that thing about, you know, that I don't want to ruin my natural talent by taking acting classes, I just want to say auditioning, getting in front of a camera, getting a script is not natural. It's not natural. It requires practice and technique. And I don't know how many of those, and those natural actors get a lot of direction. They can't necessarily do it on their own either. The ones that get movies and stuff, they're getting a lot of training and a lot of direction to stay that natural. So I just really wanted to add
I
that.
love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um,
Thank you.
please, please, I need everybody to buy a book. We need 100,000 copies sold. So Stop Memorizing Your Lines is the name of the book, and the author is Loren E. Chadima. And we are so happy that we had a chance to do this with you. I love the book. I love you. I thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And for those of you who are interested in Loren, she also has a YouTube channel. She also has an incredible newsletter. So everything is in the description below, so you can get a hold of Loren, and maybe she will work with you. We don't know, but maybe she will.
I'll also throw you guys a coupon code so you can get a little discount on the book.
Hey now, wasn't that good? I told you it was going to be great. Loren is fire, and her book, Stop Memorizing Your Lines, is worth every penny. It is amazing. Those 9 questions, oh my goodness, they're so good. She just has taken it to the next level. I love it. I want to know what you think in the comments below. And before you go, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. because I need that support. Also, share this video with friends who also need help with their memorization. Okay? All right. And don't go anywhere because we got another great interview coming up right now just for you. Yeah, for you.